she did close the coal mines, and we're better off for it, aren't we?
Well, I mean, I'm going to state the obvious first. I think obviously she didn't close down the coal mines for the climate, but putting that aside, I think that if you look at the evidence, much of the coal that was replaced was actually imported, in many cases having no effect, at least until 2008. And before that, actually being in many cases worse, because we're importing from places like Russia, US, Colombia, where the environmental standards are much worse, where the working conditions are much worse, and you have the additional carbon costs, right? That's the first point. The second point is the system that was meant to, by dismantling these communities, both culturally, socially, and in terms of their economy, it was a way of ushering in a new system of finance and neoliberal capitalism, which was far more environmentally destructive, inarguably. And then finally, dismantling trade union power, which was actually the driving force behind Thatcher, attacking. It had nothing to do with coal. It had to do with the fact that this was the most militant and strongest edge of the trade union movement and of the country in terms of working class politics, had reverberating effects in terms of political power. So you had the right of the Labour Party, which barely acknowledged climate change, and then you had the Conservatives, who until recently all but denied its existence. And we've seen decades of nothing being done on the question of climate. So you can't just look at the carbon output, which also is basically a bankrupt argument by Boris. Which I also would just add this, Jiz. I think that it's hugely offensive to celebrate and sort of chortle at the fact that these communities, by every single statistical measure, have been absolutely decimated in terms of unemployment figures, in terms of drug use, in terms of upward mobility, precisely because of the all-out war that Thatcher did against them. So I think that shouldn't be celebrated. That shouldn't be laughed about. It should be he should apologize. He should have never said it. And we actually should be investing in these communities, something that Thatcher never did.
You say laughed about. Do you mean we should be laughing at it? I mean,
no, he was chortling while saying it. So I just think
Oh, right. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. I thought you meant laugh about.
I'm thinking specifically the question of Boris. Yeah.
Okay. Now, which parts of Yorkshire do you know best then, Doctor?
I don't think me knowing Yorkshire has anything to do. I'm not here as an expert of Yorkshire. I'm a political economist. I was brought on here to discuss the question of, do you think that the attacks on the strikes in 84 and 85 and subsequently by Thatcher had a positive or negative effect on climate? I don't claim to be an expert of Yorkshire.
Oh, so you've never been to Yorkshire?
I actually have never been there. No.
No. Okay. Fine. So are you a climate denier, or do you agree that the demise of coal-fired power stations is probably a very good thing for the country?
Well, I think that nobody here is arguing that we should have mined coal forever. But what we could have had was a just transition that wasn't bent on eviscerating the economies, the culture, and the social fabric of mining communities. The battle over coal in the 1980s was over power and class, not fuel and carbon. Read Seamus Mill's The Enemy Within. The social scars left by the closure of much of the industry can be seen in Britain's ex-mining communities, regardless of whether we go there or don't.
Could you not lean into the camera? It worries me. Just sit where that's better. I don't like you leaning too close to me. So you're talking, I have read that book, by the way. I think it's complete rubbish. So you've never been to a mining community. You've never been to. I let you speak. I think you should do me. I think you should do me the privilege of allowing me to answer. And you're on here to answer any question I might want to ask you, not to tell me what I should ask you.
Absurd questions. Like I can understand a situation somewhere without having lived there. I know that, for example, apartheid South Africa was bad, and I didn't have to live under apartheid South Africa because I can read a book.
Yeah.
I can
like understand. A lot of politicians, trying to change the subject isn't going to win. I haven't really asked you any questions yet. I just wanted to sort of build up the kind of history of how much you know about this. And of course, closing the coal mines had nothing to do with environmental studies. Boris was saying that as a joke. That's why he was chortling, because a lot of people think that Margaret Thatcher's time in government was appalling and terrible. She did terrible things. I, on the other hand, think that Margaret Thatcher has been the best prime minister this country has had for at least the last 50 years. How do you respond to that?
That you believe that she's the best? I mean, I don't know how specifically.
That's what I just said. You don't need to repeat my question.
No, is that the question that you're asking me?
Yeah, I mean, how do you respond to the fact that I think she's the best prime minister that we've had for at least 50 years, probably 70, since Churchill?
Well, I mean, I don't believe that. And on
Why
the
not?
question of, well,
Why
I think
not?
in terms of the climate, and
You're
in
a
terms
professor of political economy. I mean, she did more for the economy of this country probably than any other prime minister we've had for a long time.
No, I don't think so. I think by privatizing industries, by reducing the real term wages, by exporting industry, by prioritizing finance over the real economy, the long term effects of that were that communities across this country, you know, the purchasing power since 1982, 1983 has fallen in real terms. How can you say what is the economy?
I think that's rubbish.
James,
I'll tell you why I think that's rubbish. I'll tell you why I think it's rubbish.
I don't know how much you know about the economy,
oh God.
but we shouldn't be mystifying the economy.
Well, I don't, obviously not as much as an economist.
Clearly.
Well, possibly, I don't know.
No, I don't think
more.
you do. I don't. Maybe you do, but you're not demonstrating it. But the thing is, I think that when we talk about the economy, we have to talk about the effect it has on working people, on the people of this country. It doesn't.
Why are we only talking about working people?
The working class, the vast majority of this country. That's who I think.
You know, a lot of people work. I'm a worker. Am I working class?
Well, yeah. I mean, I have a very quite a, you know, I think that the interests of the vast majority of people, there's two classes in society. There's people who are being exploited by the interest of capital, and there's people who exploit, the proprietors of capital. Of course, there's lots of middle ground there, but
I see.
the majority of this country are actually exploited by the interests of big capital or even little capital.
So where is Birkbeck University anyway? I'm not really sure.
It's in central London.
All right, okay. And so
I don't know what that has to do with you, James. You invited me onto the show. If you wanted someone from Yorkshire, you should have invited someone from Yorkshire.
No, I want somebody who has a point of view on this, and I'm trying to find out exactly what you know about it. If you don't like the questions, you can go. It's entirely up to you.
Not that I don't like the
find out
questions.
what people
I'm
actually.
responding to your questions. I'm responding to your questions.
Okay, well, not really. You're just trying to sort of move them off the mark. I mean, Margaret Thatcher had to control the trade unions because the trade unions were taking over the country, or trying to, and she actually did so much good in clamping down on trade unions that this country has flourished, obviously until the recession and then until various other things which were mismanaged by the Labour government in lots of people's views. But, you know, we are now, in America as well as here, we're all now slightly overweight. We probably have more money to spend than we ever have at any other time. We are far more of a consumer nation than we are, unfortunately, in many cases, a manufacturing nation. And I think we should be going back to that. And you must think that, surely, we should be taking the manufacturing off the Chinese and doing it here. And if we were able to, if the unions didn't get in the way, we'd be able to do it, wouldn't we?
But this is a sort of circular argument. You're saying that the unions wanted to, inverted commas, take over the country. I don't know exactly what that means, but you had powerful trade union movements in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s that had a share of the profits of large companies or even public sector.
They ruined our manufacturing. So they absolutely killed off the motor industry and thought they could control every. I tried to get.
What happened was that the real economy and industry was, yes, privatized under Thatcher, and a lot of it outsourced, including coal. And what ended up happening is that this country went into enormous levels of debt, including personal debt was mushrooming. It relied on cheap consumer durables that were made in China, which happened directly because of industrialization policies under Thatcher. And now you're saying,
we couldn't have the trade unions running the nation, could we?
We've become fat consumers. The trade unions were the ones that were trying to keep industry here. Do you understand where your argument, it's a self-defeating argument that you're making here. You're saying, we want the industry back.
I think you're doing that.
The unions were the ones that were fighting.
1 minute, here. Hang on, calm down. You're getting yourself so worked up. Usually that happens when people don't know what they're saying, so calm down.
Trying to demystify
it's
these
getting
ideas.
warm in this studio. And I think what you're doing, I'm going to be here for a few hours. What you're doing is actually making my point, because one hand you're saying, oh, well, now everybody's out there buying, and before they were making, yeah, they are. We have a society now where the majority of people are a lot better off than they used to be. We're heading into an area where that's not going to be the same for so long because of all kinds of problems coming in that I can see in the future. And I'm sure lots of politicians can, and they're trying to work it out. But Margaret Thatcher was and I actually happened to be working on a radio station in Yorkshire right at the time. So I know exactly what happened. A lot of miners who were appreciative.
That's true.
I know you probably weren't even born. A lot of the miners there were very appreciative of what Margaret Thatcher did. And what did they get for that? They got union thugs coming round to their houses, throwing eggs at their houses, intimidating them, threatening them, running battles with the police. It was a pretty ugly time. And the unions had to be controlled, and she did that. And we need now, surely, to applaud the fact that she put us on the right road. Then things went wrong. Listen, my mortgage went up from 5% to 15%. Everybody had problems. But we actually live in a better society now than we did then. You must appreciate that.
Okay, there's a few things that you've said that I don't agree with, but I think that that we live in a better society than we did then is simply not borne out in the evidence. Real term wages have fallen since then. The reason why people are able to consume is because people were given access to debt, which now people have far greater debt than they did, personal and institutional debt. Even a tangential.
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, but I'm explaining why people are able to consume what they're able to consume. It's also the reason why people were able to. We have credit
cards.
Even though people's wages fell, they were able to purchase goods because policies like Reagan and Thatcher's, which then instigated the kind of outsourcing of industrial production to areas like, the Pearl River Delta region of China and other places where you could produce a consumer durable for as low as you wanted. Real term wages have also plummeted to, in 2020, real wages fell down to 2008 levels. You can't say that we're in a better position than we were. The evidence. I
think, well, of course we are, because things are so cheap. I think for myself, I earn a third of what I used to earn. But you can spend more money. It's more easy to borrow money now. Of course, you have to pay it back. But, we're not as bad a situation as you're trying to paint.
You're making a third less than you did. If you look at it, the reason why wages were high and people had incomes that they could actually live with and buy a house with and raise a family with in this country was precisely because of the gains won by the trade union movement. Now you're presenting
I don't agree. I don't agree. I think the reason that houses are so expensive now, we haven't built enough for all kinds of reasons. Stay there. We'll come back in a couple of minutes. Why would people think that having the trade unions run the country, dictate what people should do, ruin a lot of industry? If it hadn't been for the trade unions, we'd still be making motor cars. And, well, we are making them, but we'd still be owning the companies that made the motor cars. I see you smile a lot. I think this is quite a serious subject. Not that funny, actually.
You're a very funny guy.
Don't patronize me, or I'll cut you straight off. Don't do it. Don't do it.
No, I find it amusing. I find it very amusing.
Good.
But I will
Good.
On the question of Boris was just saying this out of the blue. He was actually asked about the combo oil and gas contracts, which he's refused to tear up, despite the kind of claims of trying to fight climate change. And it was in response to that he was sort of distracting and saying, oh, well, actually it was started by. So it wasn't just out of the blue that he said that. On the question of trade unions, I think that the evidence is, if we look at across the world in the history of the 20th century, the countries that had powerful trade unions had greater distribution of wealth, had a more robust welfare state.
Which countries?
So if we look at Scandinavia, for example, you look at Finland had 85% union density.
Have you been to Scandinavia?
Would
you want to live in Scandinavia?
Have you been to Scandinavia, James? I've lived there.
Yeah, I have.
I used
several
to live
times.
In Finland. So but as someone who used to live there,
I wouldn't want to live in Finland, but it's a nice place to visit.
Oh, you don't have to. But I'm saying that the trade unions were the reason why you had Social Security, the reason why you had a robust welfare state. The weaker the trade unions, the weaker the welfare state, because it was a class compromise. So take America. You had a very low union density in America. And that's why in America, you could be living on the streets and eating out of garbage cans and they don't care because there's no welfare state in America. Have you been to America, James? I'm born and raised in America. I can say this with some strength and some conviction. And I'm telling you that their lack of a welfare system, there's a reason why there's 2.4 million people in prisons in America. Because if you're poor, you have no protection.
I'm sorry, I don't really care about America. I hate to say that. I haven't been for a few years, but I used to go a lot to Chicago. But I'm concerned. Well, I have very good friends in Chicago, and very nice place to go if nobody's been. I haven't been for about 15 years, but I can recommend it. Lakeshore Drive, the old town in Chicago. Go and have a look at the Biograph Cinema. I've done it all. But the fact is, Britain is probably the best nation to live in the world. You're living here. I think you probably must agree. The trade unions didn't do much good for this country. I'm sorry, that's my view on it. And Margaret Thatcher, I met her on a number of occasions. I don't think you did. And she had a real deep belief that people should be able to actually reap the rewards for their hard work. Now, I and Margaret Thatcher as well, a lot of people think those people who can't manage to achieve a lot should be looked after. And we have got a pretty good welfare state. Welfare states are always very difficult. But answer me this. A lot of socialists think we should all be equal. Do you believe we should all be equal?
Well, I think that there's a lot of grievances in society. And I think that everyone deserves a house. Something that Margaret Thatcher...
I agree. And she agreed with that. She sold people their council houses.
Yeah, that's the reason we have a housing crisis in this country. But also...
No, it's not. I'm sorry, but it's not. No, it's not. The reason we don't have it is a lot of local authorities, quite often socialists, don't want to build them.
They don't have the resources to build them, and the ones that existed were sold off.
No, because they waste money in many cases. But that's a side argument. The fact is that socialism doesn't work.
Everyone deserves healthcare. Everyone deserves food. People deserve enough resources. This is, and
this is a country where we try to achieve that more than anyone else.
That's just not true. Empirically, it's not true that we try to.
Don't talk to me about Scandinavia because they have very small populations.
Compared to most of Western Europe, it's not the case. And Northern Europe.
Where would you prefer to live? Where would you prefer to live in Western Europe?
That's not the argument. That's not
Where
the
would you
argument
prefer to live? Where is it better to live? France is very highly taxed. A lot of people don't like the way the system is going in France. Italy have a lot of financial problems. Where would you rather live than here?
Well, if I was
here, that's where you're living.
I was offered a job here, so I thought, London's a nice place. I like London, but if Stockholm, I got a job there, I would be happy to live there. I don't think Britain is the greatest country in the world. I think it's everyone. This is just some weird nationalism. There's nice countries that have good bits. There's nice parks here. I like that. But that's precisely because this city was built prior to capitalism. You go to Chicago or you go to New York. If you build it during capitalism, you don't have you don't have as much parks because parks aren't profitable. So that's why I'm a socialist. I don't think everything should be done for profit. You don't think everything should be done for profit, right, James? Surely.
I don't think everything should be done for profit. I don't think that at all, actually. But I don't think I have enough time to.
Thanks, comrade.
I think I'm not a comrade of yours. I don't think we should charge people. I don't think we should charge people for their health care if they can't pay for it, but I do think individuals who have enough money to pay for it should be able to pay for it, and a lot of people don't agree with that. They think that's unfair. I think that people should be able to get a house. Obviously, you should be able to get a house, and we should release more green. But we don't have, actually, we have a few problems. This is a small island, and we need to control the illegal immigration coming in here as well at the moment. That's another argument you probably wouldn't agree with. Margaret Thatcher actually took control of this country, and that's what you need in a leader. And since then, on both Conservative and Labour sides, we've never had anybody take control. And that's what we need. And I think, maybe Boris will see that he has to actually get a hold of the situation and do it.
I agree, James. I agree. We need a politician that does take control, takes control of the industries, takes control of banking, makes it publicly owned. I agree entirely. We need some more control of the economy by the state, for the people, not for profit. Am I right?
No, you need to make profit because without profit, nothing works. So you have to appreciate those people, lots of people, entrepreneurs in this country who have done amazing things and give an enormous amount back.
But James, let's go back to the original discussion around the environment. If you have a kind of nationalized coal industry, for example, the state controls it. You can actually decide to reduce emissions. But Thatcher privatized these sectors, which made it much harder to regulate. Look at privatized renewables in solar and wind. Experts are increasingly saying it's unprofitable. The only reason why you're seeing expansions in it is because it's heavily subsidized by the state or basically being propped up by the state. These models, look at so I'll just give you one kind of illustrative example. In China, solar panels now sell for around 44p per watt of electricity generating capacity. That's down from £3.24 7 years ago. So that what that means is that these areas, wind costs are the same thing. It's just part of renewables just become increasingly unprofitable, and it's precisely for that reason that we can't make these decisions around the future of the planet on the basis of profit. Just the mechanics.
Well, listen. I think you and I will probably disagree on climate change as well, because all these people who say we're going to save the planet, I have no idea what they're talking about. We can tidy the planet up. We can stop wasting so much stuff. I'm all for that. We can make sure we don't dispose so much litter. But I'll tell you what, Ashok, we'll talk again at a later stage. If somebody hasn't offered you a job in Scandinavia somewhere in the meantime, thank you, Dr. Ashok Kumar, Associate Professor of Political Economy at Birkbeck University.